Welcome, everybody. Appreciate time today. So today is the second part of the prospecting session. We're going to be focused on below the line prospecting. So if you saw last week's, it was focused on above the line prospecting. The difference being is relationship based. Above the line prospecting is you leverage relationships. As you can imagine, it's higher conversion rate, better opportunities, better interactions. Those take time to develop, and they're usually a little fewer and farther between. Obviously, as you build up over time, the goal is if you can get as many of those relationship-based opportunities, referral partners, the better. There's the other side of it of everything else we do outside of working either the base or referral partners, such as cold calling, knocking on doors, doing all the things we need to do that can immediately fill the pipeline and having a balanced approach to it. So that's what we'll be hitting on today is prospecting below line. Just to reiterate real quick, going back to where we started, looking at understanding the sales transaction, that focus on the you side of transaction, mindset, setting the foundation for this whole series of microlearning. Then we went into developing, executing the plan, being able to put that together and then be able to execute on it, what that looks like. Then went into leveraging DISC from a sales standpoint, talking about communication and how to identify and then modify communication based on who you're working with, predominantly focused for our purposes on sales. And then prospecting above the line last week, as we talked, that's relationship based. And then today going into below line prospecting, everything that's not based on the foundation of leveraging a relationship. Then next week we'll get into objection handling and anticipating objections, working them into the early part of the sales cycle so you're not blindsided or surprised by them later on and take a reactive approach. Then going into the multi-step sales process and focusing on the pre-planning that goes into a meeting leading up to it. Make sure you're best foot forward. And then the actual first meeting, a guide to that, how to run that properly. Then going from there into performing a successful assessment. How do we collect the information we need to sell whatever technology solution we are going to be recommending? We have to collect some information to be able to make a proper recommendation. What does that look like? Then we go into making the recommendation. Once we have the information, it's not just send them a quote or a proposal. It's go back, have a conversation about it on our findings. What can we do with efficiency? Where are the priorities? Lead that conversation. That way we make sure that we're on the same page before we put together numbers and a final agreement. Then go back last with the proposal that we know we're on the same page. And this is broken up into two pieces here. First one is focusing on closing the IT or Azure deal. And then the next one will be closing the telephony and the video surveillance deals, because there's some little nuances between those. And then, of course, we're going to wrap it up with Q&A, roundtable discussion, bringing in peers so you have an opportunity to share with other peers across the nation and collaborate and say, this is what we're working on, this is what we implemented, this, love this piece or having challenges with this piece, and get some feedback from peers. Today, we'll kick it off going into below line. So this is going to really build on everything that came before this, from mindset to building out your plan to last week's, the above the line prospecting. The way we look at sales is it's an exciting industry to be on because it truly is the lifeblood. If there's no sales coming in, then organization is going to struggle. And so as salespeople, we have the privilege, we have the opportunity, we sometimes have the pressure to bring in and deliver those opportunities. And it all starts with the prospecting. Some of us are fortunate. We have a company that will provide some lead generation, the marketing efforts, existing customer, things like that. Most of the time, what we get paid for is identifying opportunities, bringing them in, and then running them through the process and being able to close that business. Prospecting literally feeds that whole process. It's a critical piece of what we're doing on the sales side. We can't start a sales cycle or hit the touch points or do all the things that we're talking about if we don't have a meeting to start it off or an opportunity opened up to start the process. So just like in marketing, you hear that you have to hear a message or be imprinted with a message 7, 10, 13 times. It seems like the number keeps growing based on the latest research because people get numb to things. They don't see it. It doesn't resonate the first time. Same thing with training, with coaching. You'll see as we progress through this micro learning, we'll reiterate things. So one of the important things I want to reiterate, which I know many of you have heard, seen before, is the comment and the stance that TAG takes that salespeople are in business for themselves without the risk. What does that mean? It means a couple of things. One is that you have the ability to determine your own success. You build out whatever, if you have a quota that's provided by the company, that's just the baseline. That doesn't mean that's the limit. That doesn't mean that's all we can do. If we want to make X dollars, we know as salespeople that we can reverse engineer how many deals we need to close, how many opportunities we need to get in front of, etc. Reverse engineer that with a plan to break it down. That's incredibly exciting because we have control over that. We have influence over it. We can determine that. That's exciting from this standpoint. But then secondly, is that from a mindset standpoint, when we take on the mindset that we are a business owner, we think about things differently. We think about our activity a little different. We think about managing our time differently. It shapes our conversations quite differently when we're in front of prospects. For example, meeting with the CEO. If you go in there and meet with the CEO and you have the mindset that you're also a business owner and you're trying to help solve his problems by leveraging whatever technology solutions we have, by doing that, we're going to be able to give him a competitive advantage, help him, grow in his marketplace, do a number of different things from a business standpoint. If we have that high level conversation, that's going to change the shape of the conversation versus I sell this widget or I sell this piece of technology or how many prints do you have? All those things that's what everyone else is doing. If we go in from a mindset standpoint of we are a business owner and talk like as a peer to the decision makers, that's going to reshape conversations, no doubt. Going back to the second presentation you had, a lot of this activity and a lot of things we talked about today and you heard last week from above the line last week and today below the line prospecting, you can further incorporate into your sales plans, your marketing plans, your life business plan that was hit on in the second presentation. Looking at, what are the monetary things you want with income, with investments, with savings. Look at the things, the houses, the toys, the items that we want for ourselves. Then the passion category of want to travel, want to learn another language, whatever those things, those experiences are, building those really help provide the foundation of now, how do I get that? Well, we're in sales professions, so we know that we have an ability to create, to an extent, our destiny with our income. That will really help set the foundation going into this. So two types of prospecting, the way we look at it is one is above the line and the other is below line. Within these, there's different strategies, different tactics. The differentiator, again, is relationship-based. Whole lot better opportunity when someone refers them Tom and says, you have to talk to Tom. He knows what he's talking about. Schedule time to meet with him. Versus Tom makes a phone call, cold call, introduce himself as a technology advisor, but the person has no idea who he is, what he does, how he's going to help them. Even if he gets the meeting, that first meeting is completely different. So a lot higher opportunity, a lot higher conversion rate of above line prospecting. And we'd love to only be able to do that. In some cases, when we get towards when we build up enough momentum, maybe we can do 80+% of that. But especially in the beginning and for most of us on a day-to-day basis, has to be a blend of building referral partners like the Bird Dogs, elite groups, working your existing customer base referrals, along with doing below line prospecting because it'll deliver quicker hits, not going to be as high quality, but you can go out and generate an opportunity today that you didn't have yesterday without a relationship, such as making a cold call, knocking on a door, going to a networking event, doing those types of things. Although they're not as high quality opportunities, they will generate immediate opportunities, especially done consistently. So we're going to focus on today is below high level. Some of the things we're going to touch on: making effective phone calls, no matter what we're doing on the sales side. As many referral partners, as many channels we have built out, we still need to know how to make an effective phone call because it's part of what we're doing on some level. We always take a look at it from making a proactive phone call is typically the tip of the sword. It starts the conversation. It opens it up. It creates dialogue. It's a whole lot more effective than just sending an email or a message on a social platform. We'll take a look at making effective phone calls, what that looks like, some of the key pieces to it. Getting past the gatekeeper, as we all know, is that some are easier than others. The reality is that most of the time we got to get through them. And there's certain ways, there's certain tones, there's certain things we keep in mind to be able to do that more effectively. Because if we get stuck at the gatekeeper half the time, then that's a big problem. We can't get to the decision maker, the person we're trying to talk to, then nothing else matters. We're stuck at the front gate. So how do we get through that in an effective way? Scripting and talk tracks. We'll talk about a little bit of scripting and a talk track that I think you guys will all appreciate, that allows you to open up, particularly like Ryan, for you and your team, of being able to open up conversations on the IT side that without getting into the technical weeds. I think oftentimes we get stuck on IT can be fairly complex. And if we get some questions, I don't want to get any questions because I can only answer a couple of them. How do we open up a conversation around IT, or better yet, open up a meeting or an opportunity without getting into technical weeds? So we'll hit on that with talk tracks. That's going to be the 3-question approach I'll get into here. Knocking on doors, still something that can generate opportunities. Looking across the nation, with all of our members, there are people knocking on doors right now and creating opportunities. Is it something you have to be aware of your area, where you're going, things like that, because of what's going on with COVID? Absolutely. But it's something that, whether it's you slowly pick up now or looking at in the future, it can be a valuable piece of filling the pipeline. Creative campaigns, looking at things a little bit differently. We'll get into that. Networking events, again, those have been impacted like most other things. A lot of them have either paused their in-person meetings or just doing remote. But we'll touch on how you can still maximize, whether it's remote or in-person meetings with networking. And then LinkedIn and social platforms and how to leverage those appropriately. Getting past the gatekeeper. One of the critical pieces as salespeople of what we get compensated for, because if we don't get through, we're not talking to our prospects. I know many of you are tenured sales reps. You've gone through many of gatekeepers before, but it's worth talking about here from a high-level standpoint. There's 2 things that tremendously help the conversion of getting through gatekeeper. One is urgency, and the other is familiarity. We say that we convey those 2 with our language, with our words, with our tone, with our pace. In doing that, you sound a lot more credible and like you're supposed to be calling, and that the person, whether they are or aren't, are expecting your call. And that's the impression you want to give, because what we don't want to do is call and say, hey, how are you doing? I'm a telemarketer. Can you transfer me to your big man upstairs? Not going to get in. When we go through with urgency and familiarity, helps tremendously get through. And usually the receptionist or gatekeeper just assumes they sound like they should be calling, so I'm going to put them right through. You look at what is going through their head on the gatekeeper side. They're thinking 3 things. One is they're trying to collect your name. Who is this? So we want to give that to them right away. Then what company are you with, or where are you from? So I want to give that. This is Ryan with Tag. And then they always want to know one other thing is, what is this regarding, or are they expecting your call? Or what is this about? Is it a sales call? All those things are pretty much the same. It's what is this regarding? We know that those are the three things that they all want to know. We give 2 of them immediately. We identify ourselves, our name of the company, and then we use the urgency familiarity to say, I need to speak with John. Not, is John around, or can I please talk to John, or anything like that. This is Ryan from Tag. I need to speak with John. Is he in the office today? And you can tell it's a little bit more urgency, familiarity. So oftentimes just hearing that, you'll get passed right through. Little tweaks will make a big difference on that and how you say it. When they ask, what is this regarding? Is this a sales call? Doesn't matter. All those things are kind of similar. They're trying to figure out, should you be calling or not? Should I pass you through, or am I going to get in trouble? There's a few ways you can handle that. One of the most effective ways that we've seen is that we leverage a name of our owner or our manager. Obviously, you sit down with your team or your manager or your owner, and you make sure we're all on the same page of, okay, I'm tasked as a salesperson, open up opportunities to get in and try to be a technology advisor and create opportunities. Okay, so you're asking me to go out into the marketplace, get appointments, right? Okay, perfect. Then the concept is okay, this is Ryan from Tag. I need to speak with John. What is this regarding, Ryan? Dale Stein, the owner of my company, asked me to get a hold of him. Is he in the office today? we leverage that whether they know who Dale Stein is or not, we told them he's the owner of my company. They may think it's okay, peer-to-peer with owner and owner. I'm going to push this call through because I don't want to disrupt it. I don't know exactly the content. Let me get out of this guy's way and pass him through. It's a very effective way to get in, talk to the right person, get through the gatekeeper, keep the conversation going. This can go into more depth. There's a video on Tag's website, which Dale Stein actually goes in and does this. You'll enjoy it. It's an older video, but it is still applicable, still relevant today. And so you can check that out on the website. Getting into scripting. The way we look at scripting is that's a starting point. It gives us the ability to get up on training wheels, get moving forward. Sometimes we all fall, into a little bit of call reluctance, whether we have other things to do or just don't feel comfortable with a new solution or a new sales position, and we're not sure exactly what to say, how to say it. If we're able to put together scripting, it gives us the confidence, it gives us the backup of if we make the call and we're stumbling through it, we can lean back on it. Or if we just need the right words to get going and get the momentum, first 5, 10, 15 calls, it allows us to do that. So that's where it can be very effective in dialing that in and then rehearsing it, role playing it internally, and then actually making the calls, recording them and listening to them. And then, we always joke that once you listen to them, when you're done, getting sick to your stomach over how you sound, then you can give yourself some constructive criticism, fine tune little things, and then make calls again and continue to optimize the process. There's frameworks to do anything. Same thing with scripting, with making calls, is that one of my favorite frameworks for this came out of a book. Is not something I created. It is a framework that I pulled from one of the better sales books I've read called Fanatical Prospecting. It is a framework we'll touch here in a minute that's all about filling the pipeline. It is a framework that's very effective, a 5-part, to be able to shape a conversation regardless of what technology solution you're representing. So I'll hit that in a second, and think of scripting as a starting point. It gets you started in the right direction, and then you'll get the confidence, you'll get the momentum, you'll fine tune it, make it better as you go, and then eventually you'll grow beyond it, but you can always fall back on it or use the framework if you're going after a new market or a new opportunity. And then here's the exciting part with regards to the results of it. So after making thousands of calls and then you managing over and listening, coaching on probably tens of thousands more calls, is that I realized that there's some times where you can make a call, say everything perfect, tone with pace, with message, everything seems perfect. At the end, they say, nope, not a chance, hang up. And it's like, well, what'd I do wrong, right? The opposite, you can make a call, you stumble over everything, you call them the wrong name, you forget your name, and at the end, you're like, you wouldn't want to meet with me, would you? And they're like, yeah, I'll take the meeting. And you're like, what? So after hearing, seeing, experiencing that, I realized that 80% of the success of making calls comes from simply making the call, not being perfect, not having all the tricks and tools and tactics, but 80% of it, if you make the volume and you make the quantity and do that consistently, either every day or on a weekly basis, habitually, you'll get results from it, no doubt. Now, the other 20% comes down to fine tuning and your message and your flow and your confidence and your tone and your ability to use pauses and all those things. But what's exciting is that 80% of it, you just pick up the phone, make calls, and start with the basic script, and you'll have success and set appointments. And lastly, let us help, is that, there is no perfect script that works for every situation, but there's definitely better things to say than others. There's definitely better scripting to use than just winging it on every call. If you have a script and you want to share it and get some feedback on maybe some fine tuning, or you want to create a new one and work together on that, we're happy to assist in that. So please leverage us. Okay. We're reaching out. It starts with, you got to choose your targets. Who are we reaching out to? Who are we trying to meet with? We outline the ideal profile. And whether that's user counts, whether it's revenue base, whether it's geography, who do we want to work with? Who are the opportunities we think are going to be best? And then we choose those so we know that that's in line first and foremost. Then we need to identify decision maker. Last thing we want to do is be chasing our tail. when we schedule a meeting, but it's with someone who's not a decision maker, not an influencer, and someone that's just passing time by collecting bids or doing whatever. We need to make sure that when we're identifying decision makers, that's the right one that we want to be working with. And it's a whole lot easier, as all of you know, to work your way down the ladder as opposed to start with the receptionist and then get it to the office manager and then get it to the C-level and then ultimately the owner. Uphill battle. So start from the top down. And then choose a lead solution. This is something I think we see too often, is where many of you, is that you have all types of solutions that you can offer from a technology standpoint. We go in and say, here's my menu. You want cloud, you want, document management, you want a phone system, you want carrier services, et cetera, et cetera. Most likely they're not going to say, I'll take 3 of those. It's not going to happen that way. They're going to be confused or be like, I don't think we're doing anything right now. The idea is, we know our solutions. We know what can help their company better than they do. We want to take that responsibility, positioning that. Then that way we lead with whatever we think is going to make the biggest impact to them now, whether that's remote working capabilities, whether that's whatever the case is. We know what it does. We know what our solutions are for. Knowing the company that we're working with, it's on us to lead with a solution. And then, of course, we can always pivot and shift into other opportunities. But if we lead, then that way we're showing that we know their business and we know what can help them. And then, of course, other considerations, whether it's seasonal business, different industries, all those other things, take a look at that. And with the team, the manager, figure out who's our target list. How do we define that before you just start making random phone calls? One other point to make here before jumping into 5-step framework is, if you guys are buying list, there's a few different places to go. Discover.org, ZoomInfo, things like that. You can buy list all day. There's a whole lot of other ones as well. There's one other one that many people aren't familiar with. You may have heard of like CoStar. It's similar to that, where it's called Insight PRM by Windover, and happened to be a tag partner. But the crux of it is that it's a trigger event with that list, meaning that it's not just a list of, this industry with this many users or this amount of revenue, geographical area, but with Insight PRM, it actually is a list that tells you when companies are moving, when their lease is expiring, which is a potential move, which we all know, whether it's the copier side, whether it's other technology we're selling, is that oftentimes the lease of an office space corresponds with lease of equipment. That can be tremendously helpful as a trigger event, that we know when potentially things are making an assumption of when those could be coming due. And then if they are moving, then, and I want to get someone's feedback here, is when you move your residential house, right? You move into a new house. Before you pack everything up, do you oftentimes, you just do by show of hands or nod your head, do you oftentimes go through and pack everything in your house? Or do you go through and take a look at, that's old appliance or that's old furniture or don't need this or that before you just pack everything up? Would you say that's fair? Businesses do the same thing. If they have a 15-year-old copier in there, a 25-year-old phone system, they're going to be scared to unplug it because it might not come back to life. So they're going to evaluate before they move whatever that technology is. So that list can be a whole lot better because there's a trigger event. On X date, they're going to relocate, and it's not going to be a maybe. It's going to be either yes, they're going to do something, or no, they're going to keep their old system, but they have to move into a new space on a certain date. So leveraging trigger events like that can be a whole lot more effective than going in and just calling a list based on their user count, geography, industry. Let me know if you need more information on that one. I can send it to you. Just send me an email. 5-step appointment setting framework. As I alluded to before, this is a framework that you can plug into any type of solution, whatever the opportunity is. This is some guidelines, being able to go in and build out scripting, particular for that. First step is get their attention. Best way to get someone's attention, use their name. They hear their name, they're listening. Second is identify yourself. Ryan tag. That's one of the first things they want to know is who's calling me, who is this? Third thing they want to know is, what do you want? And I always joke is that I love taking sales calls. My information is pretty easy to find out there. If you want to get my phone number that rings through to my cell phone, you can get it pretty easy. And so I get a decent amount of sales calls, telemarketers, a wide variety of very interesting calls sometimes. I look at it as R&D, research and development. Is that when I get a call from a salesperson, I love just hearing them out because you don't know what they're going to say. And it's always interesting. So I'll usually have a little bit of fun with it and give them a couple objections or push back and just hear how they handle it because I find it entertaining, interesting, right? One of the first things that we're thinking when we get a sales call, even as salespeople, is that, what do you want? It's like, what can I do for you? Okay, this is who you are. This is your name, company. Why are you calling me? So we want to tell them that pretty early in conversation. It comes right after identifying ourselves. Is tell them what you want. Well, I'm calling to schedule an appointment with you. Naturally, then that transitions into or segues into bridging to a because. This is where the customization comes in with whatever solution you have, is that we know technology solves problems, or it should. Whether those are efficiencies or productivity or cost savings or reliability, whatever those are, is that we can leverage those in this bridge to because. One example recently that a lot of people are dealing with is remote working capabilities. Whether it's on the IT side, voice, print, whatever it is, many businesses, even still today, don't have the right setup. They don't have the right technology, they don't have the right tools at home. A talking point there. But here's the with them is what's in it for them, what's a bridge to because, and then the final step is the one that sometimes we miss, is asking for what we want. Not just making a statement and letting it float out there, but that this is the cap, is how about we meet Tuesday 1, discuss this further. So we can go into detail on this. This is high level. We have another presentation on TAG website that goes into this in more depth and detail. Happy to work with any of you on this as well. This is straightforward, effective, but simple framework that you can apply to whatever solution you have. We just touched on scripting. Talk tracks. We use scripting and talk track. Scripting, the way I think about it, is training wheels. It gets us going in the right direction. It gets us up and rolling, and then we build confidence as we go. Eventually, we don't need training wheels anymore, but it does help. Talk tracks, on the other hand, like bumper bowling, is that we know where we're going. We're going down the aisle, but we're going to zig and zag a little bit. We're going to bounce off different things. And so talk track allows us to know where we're going and the dialogue we want to have, but not necessarily be perfectly scripted verbatim to rehearse. Talk tracks we can use from this standpoint of, here's an example, is the 3 questions, the IT prospecting approach. Now, this can be primed and should be primed in different areas. Now, this can be used from anywhere from calling a customer and following up on a service request on a different solution, or at a backyard barbecue, or a networking event, or wherever it is. But it's good to be able to prime it with setting a foundation, then jumping into these 3 questions. And think of this as replacing the question that too many of us ask about, are you happy with your IT? Are you happy with your IT company? And I don't know about you guys, but I've asked that before, and I don't think I've ever gone, absolutely not. Here's a check. Let's how fast can you take over? We would love that, but the reality is that that's going to be super rare. It's not going to create dialogue. Instead of asking, are you happy with your IT? Let's ask open-ended questions that create dialogue that then can lead down a path of scheduling a meeting to discuss it further. So that's what this is. The first question we ask is, how are you currently managing your IT? If someone says yes, you can't answer that. They can't answer that way, right? They have to answer in some way that is dialogue. How are you currently managing your IT? We're typically going to get one of 3 responses in one of 3 categories. They're either going to say that we have what we jokingly call chuck in a truck, where it's basically a guy running around in a truck with a cell phone with some hardware equipment in the back, and he's taking care of half a dozen clients. Super reactive, break fix type of model is not going to be able to compete from our standpoint of being a full team, backed up with systems, all those things. That's chuck in a truck. They may say, yeah, I got a guy. I call him when I need him. That tells us something. That tells us he has chuck in a truck. We know that we're going to shape the conversation based on that. We're going to have to get over price barrier. We're going to have to reset expectations of proactive managed IT versus reactive, how he's doing it. But point being is we get a whole lot of information the way he answers. He's either going to say chuck in a truck or, oh yeah, we have a guy on staff. That means internal IT. whether it's one guy or a team or a department. That tells us that they have it in-house. That's going to be a different conversation going into it, that we know they're in-house IT. That's going to be different to displace in-house IT. Now, it can't be done, but it's a different conversation. You position yourself differently. We need that information. Third is that we have a company that handles that. Then that's going to be more like outsourced firm, like we'd be trying to replace. So then that tells us, again, more information. The whole crux of this is that it's open-ended. It creates some form of dialogue. Oftentimes they'll expand on it. And there's a tactic here, another framework I learned a while back called the llama, like the animal, L-A-M-A. It's something that always stuck with me, partially because of the name. And then the other part is because it's super effective in these types of situations where we want to ask a question and then we want to create some dialogue and keep the conversation going. Llama is an acronym for listen, acknowledge, make a statement, ask a question. With that, you can use it in this approach to be able to create dialogue and go back and forth in a fluid manner. So it's not like we're just asking, how do you do this? And the next question, like it's a interrogation or a questionnaire that we're like, okay, I just got to ask you these three questions, because that doesn't create dialogue. It's not natural. Keep that in mind. Here's the second question. After we ask this, they're going to tell us wherever they tell us. We're going to listen. We're going to acknowledge. We're going to respond appropriately. You can use a llama to be able to make it flow. And then we want to ask the second question, regardless of what they say, is that we get to ask another open-ended question. That is, how is that working out for you? We're not saying, oh, are you happy? Oh, yeah, or no, or whatever it is. But we're saying, how is that working out for you? They can't answer yes or no. And so it forces them to respond with something different. Again, creates a little bit more dialogue. They're going to say it's great, or it's horrible, or most likely somewhere in between that's neutral. Like, oh, it's okay. We've had him for a long time. He's not that expensive, and whatever the case is. But again, we get more information. It creates dialogue. And depending on what they say, we might be able to ask some follow-up questions to that. Here's the key, is that regardless how they answer these two, we can go on to the third. And we have quite a bit of information going into the third. Would you be open to exploring a different way of doing it? Regardless if they said they're happy and it's their brother and they're never going to change, still ask, would you be open to exploring a different way to do it? Because you just don't know. They may be, and it's a very non-threatening way that opens up a conversation, not to say, can I take over your IT and change everything you're doing? But no, would you be open to exploring a different way of doing it? And oftentimes owners are open to looking at different ways that they can improve in different areas, cost savings, productivity, etc. This is a very simple, straightforward 3-question approach to open up IT conversations. It does not get into the technical weeds. So you don't have to worry about, being asked, well, what are you using for backup? What's your BCDR? How do you guys do help desk? This, that, and the other. It's not going to go there. And if it does, then immediately you can shift it you can catch it and shift it into, well, how about we schedule an appointment? We can answer all those questions. I'll bring out my technical director and get into all the details. How about Tuesday at 1? So you can leverage it to get into an appointment if it does get technical. But nature of these is it creates dialogue from more of a business perspective without getting into technical weeds. Does that make sense to everybody? Before we get into door knocking here, one last thought is that worst case with this approach is that you get some more information, you can document it, you'll be able to follow up with it later, and you keep the door open by planting a seed, because then they at least know that you're going to be a resource. And if they say no to the appointment, they say, no, just wouldn't be open to right now. Okay, Mr. Prospect, well, please think of us as a resource. Here's my personal cell phone number. If there's anything I can do, even just be a sounding board if something doesn't sound right, or if you hit a roadblock with anything IT or technology related in the future, you can call my cell phone anytime and I'll be a resource for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out, okay? We've used that approach time and time again, and you will get phone calls sometimes 6 months later, sometimes 2 years. Business owners remember that. It leaves the door open. And worst case, you planted a seed that it's easy for them to circle back to you when an issue happens, because we all know in technology is that it's not if something breaks or if there's a challenge with technology, it's going to happen. Is that there's always going to be something that pops up. And so if we're there and we plant that seed, that can open up a door that time to get us back in there. And then obviously best case, you get an opportunity to get in there and show them a different way of doing it. Another approach, door knocking. Getting into door knocking. There's a whole section of this on TAG's website. And obviously some of this is being stopped right now because of COVID. But depending on your area, depending on your comfort level, all those things, is that this can be a valuable piece of your mix for prospecting. On the website, you can go in and find the presentation. You can find the recording of it. You can even get the templates for emails and the cadence of follow-up. Because one thing that we did differently is when you go knock on doors, we're not trying to talk to the owner right there. All we're trying to do is get the information so that we can follow up appropriately, because we don't want to disrupt what they're doing right now. Sometimes in a meeting, even if we get them, it's so quick and short that part doesn't go anywhere. There's a whole cadence here of follow-up emails and phone calls back and forth to be able to leverage our visit to their office and when we get the right information. And this can be done very quick. The way I used to do it is I would just put in a half-hour calendar block in between or before or after, immediately before or after my meetings for that week. So I'd take a look at next week and say, okay, I have this meeting and that meeting I know are in a densely populated like business park or in a skyscraper, right? Or a building that I know there's a lot of other tenants. So I'm going to calendar a half hour before or after a couple of those to knock on the doors, leverage my meeting with their neighbor and see if I can create an opportunity. You do that and you knock on, 15, 20 doors a week, it'll generate opportunities for you. Again, it's one piece of what you can do. Creative campaigns, another way. A couple examples here. I start with handwritten letter. I'll get into that with an example. Let's start with dimensional mail. So dimensional mail is getting creative and getting your foot in the door in a different way than everyone else. You can refer to it as lumpy mail, dimensional mail, something creative that you send in a package, gets the prospect's attention, and starts a dialogue. So an example of this is one thing that we tried out is that we ordered a dozen red carpets from Amazon. So a little red carpet like you'd see at the Grammys. We sent it to them with a note saying, I want to roll out the red carpet for you and take care of all your IT. And I'll give you a call next week to continue the conversation. It's a creative, different way that will get people's attention. A rug shows up to their office and sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. Other times they're like, what a creative idea. Like, I'm just going to schedule an appointment because I like the idea because it's something different. The idea being is that don't limit yourselves with how to open up doors. You can have some fun with it. You can get creative. And that was one of my favorite parts is that if you have an idea, it's like, why not try it? See if it works, especially on a small scale like that. Choose 10, 20, leverage something that's creative that could open a conversation in a different way. It'll be well received. Handwritten letter campaign. What we did here is did a handwritten letter. This is one of the campaigns that did and had some nice success with is everyone has a local business journal. And they do different top 100 best places to work, top 50 healthiest companies, or best CEOs, or best environment, whatever it is. We all have those in our area. San Diego, there's a San Diego Business Journal, fastest growing 100 companies. My thought process was, well, these companies are fastest growing. I'd love to get some technology in to them when they're small and then grow with them. Did a handwritten letter campaign where this is the copy of it. But we had a intern at the time who graciously allowed us to have him handwrite this onto a letterhead and then also put it into an envelope that was handwritten and addressed. Because then we sent that out to the CEOs. The difference being is that when you get an email or you get a social connection, you have one of many. But when either yourself or CEO, when you get a handwritten, hand-addressed envelope, you're going to open it. So worst case, you're at least going to open it up and listen to the message or read the message. And then it's all about the follow-up to create the opportunity. But just to give an example, I think it was like the second or third call that I did on this. I called this company that was a medical device company, had about 80 or so users. I have been prospecting them for over a year, knocking on their door, calling them, doing social media connections. I could not get in front of the CEO. I sent this to him. I call in, I get transferred to him, which was the first. And I'm like, oh, I must be doing good today, getting past the gatekeeper. I get to him. He answers the phone. He didn't even say hello. He didn't ask for anything. what he told me when he answered is, Ryan, I have your letter on my desk. I appreciate you sending this. I'm going to transfer you to my assistant, Amber, so she can schedule a meeting for us to sit down and talk. I said, perfect. And he transferred me and converted into an appointment. So not that happens every one, but there's a number of them that led to that. Companies, particularly ones I couldn't get in front of any other way. Get creative, have fun with it, try different things, and see what works. Networking events. Many of these are being put on pause or turned virtual. By show of hands, how many of you guys are belong to or are part of any sort of chambers, associations, nonprofits, private clubs? Anybody part of any of those? No? Okay.
Yes, we are. We're a member of every chamber in Southwest Virginia.
Nice. Okay. Thanks, Eddie. Right now, they're all struggling because they can't have in-person events, or they're trying to figure out how to go to virtual. These can be one piece of what you're doing, but here's the key. Just like anything else, is that in sales, we have to pick and choose where we spend our time and what's going to be the most effective use of our time. With these organizations, the most effective thing that we found to do is get involved with either the board or chair committee. For example, most of the chambers, they'll have a chair or a committee that's responsible for new member recruitment. You can go to them and say, I'd love to be a part of that. And what it does gives you an opportunity to not only get intimately involved with the current membership by going out and say if there's prospects in that membership you want to be closer with, you want to build a relationship with, you can leverage that chair role to go and, I know you've been a long-time member. I want to introduce myself. I'm a new chair for the new recruitment of members moving forward. I want to get your feedback. What would you like to see from new membership, and ask questions along that line that will position you differently than, hey, I sell technology. We're both in this chamber. Can we do business together? And then also it shapes different conversations of being able to reach out to new potential members for the association, because you can leverage your chair. Hey, I'm Ryan. I sit on the chair at, so-and-so chamber. And, we're looking for companies. We don't have very many companies that are commercial real estate brokers, firms, and we love to have more in here. And we came across your organization, wanted to start a conversation with you on it. And that positions you differently to get in on trying to help them by bringing them in. And oh, by the way, this is, later on comes, this is what I do, in addition to chairing on this committee. Different way to position yourself to have different conversations that most aren't doing. So LinkedIn, social media in general. This is something, in my opinion, is a double-edged sword, is that you'll see a lot of social media gurus that will say, live and breathe by, the different series of send a message, send a meeting connection, offer this, follow up, every 5 days, and then send them something, etc. I don't know about you guys, but I get a lot of those messages, a lot of connection requests, a lot of activity inbound from people like that. And so it is almost worse in terms of volume than like spam email. From a effective standpoint of all things you're doing, does it need to be part of the puzzle? Absolutely. It's a great tool. You can leverage it to get more information. You can get into like premium accounts and be able to have more information available to you. Sales Navigator is a fantastic tool, but all that stuff takes a lot of time. And so what I see is sometimes people spend too much time trying to nurture all those opportunities, focus on LinkedIn as too big of a piece of the pie for everything you're doing for prospecting. So absolutely use it for research, for building relationships, for getting the connections after the meetings, to build your own brand on there. But don't let it be the majority of what you're doing from a prospecting standpoint, because then you leave a lot of other things on the table. So what would sales be without follow-up? So when we're going through, not every opportunity, especially the below-line opportunities, are going to be the one-time hits. You call, you set an appointment, you're off to the sales cycle. A lot of them are going to be nurturing opportunities where you have to follow back up. And email drip campaigns can be tremendously helpful for that, because we can't do, if we're doing, say, 100 touches, new opportunities a month, every month after month, we're not going to be able to keep that up with phone calls. Eventually, we're going to have too many. We have to do email drip campaigns and prioritize what are the best ones, what are the 20s that we want to be able to follow up with that personal touch, phone call, etc. and all the rest we don't want to forget about, but we want to put into some systematic platform like email drip campaign where they get something from us with our name, with our company name in front of them at least once a month, so that if timing is right, that they'll see it and reach out to us even if we miss a phone call or just don't have they're not one of the 20s to reach out to from a phone call standpoint. So it allows us to do some long-term nurturing. Whatever the system is that your company has, use that, or if it doesn't have one, build your own system for follow-up so that opportunities don't fall through the cracks. Leveraging tags marketing. I know many of you on here will or are actively leveraging Janet and the tag marketing team to go in, customize all this marketing collateral. So if you haven't seen the collateral there's hundreds of advertisements like these. You can go in and copy and paste, or better yet, you can have it automated where it's customized for you, where you have a list and then you choose the ads and it'll be converted into your logo, your name, your contact info, and then schedule them for 6 months out so that you know that your list is going to get dripped on every 3 weeks or whatever that is, and you don't have to worry about it. Leverage this information, leverage Janet and her team. They do an excellent job with all these ads. Make it super easy to set this up. And if you have your own marketing department or use something like a MailChimp, all these can be sent to you so you can plug it into whatever marketing platform you have and utilize this as content. Below line prospect, obviously we got to move them through the process, from a suspect to prospect to a lead or opportunity, then ultimately to a customer. The biggest piece of this is be systematic. The activity will drive the sales. It'll fill the pipeline. Consistency and building a system around whatever activities you decide will be the best blend from a prospecting standpoint will be critical. So keys to success, wrapping this up is treat prospecting like a client meeting. If you have a client meeting, you're going to do everything you can, especially a brand new client, is that to be on time, to show up prepared, and to not push it. You're going to respect that time. Same thing should be happening with prospecting. Too often we'll say, I'm planning on prospecting today, and then always something pops up and it gets pushed. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll catch up on Friday, whatever it is. If we treat prospecting like a client meeting, we're going to calendar it, and then we're going to stick to that time. Do a couple things. One is force our hand to do that at that time. Obviously, you got to hold yourself accountable. Have your team do that in addition to yourself, but also being able to do that consistently on certain days or certain times. It'll build up the habit. It doesn't feel right if you didn't start your day making a few calls or doing some prospecting or finishing your day work or whatever that time slot is that you decide this is prospecting time, to keep that consistency going. Consistency, it's all about that. So doing a burst today and then not touching it again until next week or week after will not yield the same results as a little bit every day, an hour every day, whatever that time is, consistently done will build up a solid pipeline. And then back to mindset is that this is one of the bigger barriers, particularly new sales reps that we got to get over, is that when they call and they're trying to set an appointment, going through the whole process, and they finally get a decision maker on the phone. It's like, they go through the whole process and it's like, you wouldn't want to schedule an appointment with me, would you? And it's like, well, would you say it like that? No, it's exaggerated, but expect to win goes a long ways. If you call them and you expect, it's like, I expect them to take a meeting with me. I expect them to be interested in what we're talking about. Changes your confidence, changes your tone, and they will pick up on that, no doubt. And the reality is that we are all in this profession because we know we have solutions to them. We wouldn't be calling them if we didn't have something that we know could help their business. We'd go in with that mindset. That'll change the conversation. That is below the line prospecting. This is all designed to be components of your whole prospecting mix, adding to the relationship side that Brian hit on last week. And again, a lot of these topics like getting past the gatekeeper, knocking on doors, scripting, you can find additional resources on the TAG website, from presentations to scripting, etc. If you need anything, you can always reach out to me directly. Happy to work with everybody on it too. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll keep the conversations going offline, okay? So
Sounds good.
Appreciate
Thank
the time.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.